Are you in the market for a new gel and you've seen True Fuels pop up on your social media feed? Maybe you heard that Alistair Brownlee, triathlon royalty, has actually co-founded this brand and apparently designed it himself. Well, that's got to be exciting. I was dead keen to test these out, so I've contacted them. They've sent me this trial pack for free so that I can unpack it and explain whether it's going to be the right gel for you. Hi, I'm James, a registered sport nutritionist and running enthusiast, and in a previous career, I designed supplements. So I'm keen to unpack exactly what is in this, but I think we should start off with pricing, really try and set the scene there. So this is the starter pack that I've been sent, and it works out to be £3 per gel. So you get 6 gels in the starter pack, 3 of the lower sodium and 3 of the higher sodium gels. I'm going to explain about the ins and outs of those in a second. However, you can also buy these in a bigger bundle, which drops them down to £2.55 per gel. That price point puts them very much in between these two. So the Precision Fuel and Hydration and the Maurten gels. So these are some of the most expensive gels on the market. So for that, you're hoping you'll hopefully get a high quality product. The reason I've also singled these two out is that these are unflavored gels. And this is meant to be very moderatively /unflavored. The reason I've said /unflavored there is that it's got a slight coconut feel. That's only me from reading the label. I haven't actually tasted it yet. So I'm keen to taste it, and I'm going to do the first one live to try and give you a feel for what it tastes like. Okay, so let's unbox. Okay, so we get a little bit of information here, quite a lot of information. We get 3 sheets explaining how to use it. There's a QR code on there. We also got what makes our gel stand out. So the sport nutritionist critic in me is saying, no flavor fatigue. Yes, that's just because it's an unflavored gel. No GI distress. Well, there's going to be lots of other factors that are going to be laying into that one, so it's quite difficult to claim that. Maximum carb absorption, sure, either having a 1:1 or a 1:0.8 or even a 1:2. It's going to be very, very similar in terms of carb absorption, but that, to be honest, only becomes practical when you're having more than 60 grams of carb per hour. Stackable, customizable concept, well, you can do that with all gels, and a steady release system, well, even I don't really know what that means. So that's the marketing. What's actually in it? So here we go. So on the back of this one, it's got an explanation as to why they have a slightly different ratio of glucose and fructose. Here they go for a 1:1 instead of a 1.1 to 1.2 or 1 to 0.8 that other gels have. They've referenced 2 studies by Asker You Can Drop, a 2005 study and a 2010 study. Now, to my knowledge, if you're having more than 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour, you do need more than just glucose. So whether you're having glucose and fructose, and to be honest, I think the ratio is probably a little bit overhyped, and brands are probably cottoning onto this to try and get a little bit of a different angle. If you're having a 1 to 1.2, 1 to 0.8, or 1:1, it's probably much of a muchness. Unless potentially you are super elite, in which case you might want to pay a little bit more attention. No sweeteners or fillers. Well, the fact there's no sweeteners in, great. You're already ingesting a large amount of sugar, so it's probably going to be quite sweet anyway. And just having that super intense feeling is not really my scene. In the how to use section, it explains that you can take it straight or you can mix it into water. It's great explaining that you can do that. However, you can probably do that with most gels. Okay, so got a nice little 30% off my next order. Okay, so the first thing I'm noticing here is that there's 40 grams of carbohydrate in it. So if you compare that with its 2 competitors, 10 grams more carbohydrate than the Precision Fuel and 15 more than the Maurten. I like a bigger carb serving. Now that sport nutrition is becoming a lot more prevalent, people are getting used to having higher intakes of carbohydrate. So if you're aiming to have between 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate, well, if you're having a 30-gram gel, that's going to be having one every 20 minutes. So if you're into endurance sports and you're doing over the 3-hour point, then between 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate is going to be what you're looking for. But if you were to fuel with a Maurten gel, you would need one of these every 20 minutes to get up to 75 grams per hour. Whereas you could have one of these every 30 minutes and you'd have 80 grams per hour. So suddenly it makes it a little bit more practical, a little bit easier to get in large quantities of carbohydrate. So I like the 40 grams. The next thing I notice is we've got 2 options here. So I've got 3 of each in this starter pack. We've got the 0.25 grams of salt and 0.1 grams of salt. But I personally find this quite confusing, and I'm a sport nutritionist. The piece of information that you're looking for regarding electrolytes is the amount of sodium. So you have to convert the amount of salt into sodium to be able to get that information. So to do that, you divide it by 2.5. So 0.25 divided by 2.5 is going to be 0.1 or 100 milligrams, whereas 1 divided by 2.5 is going to be 400. Now, I didn't know that off the top of my head, and between you and me, I had to Google that on my phone, not Google it, use my calculator on my phone to be able to get that piece of information. So here, 400 milligrams of sodium and 100 milligrams of sodium. The second thing though, is by adding sodium to gels, it means you can't actually split your electrolyte requirement and your fueling needs. Some clients may love that. However, from the research that I've done and the hydration strategies I build with clients, the amount of sodium that you need is going to be dependent on the duration that you're going and the amount of fluid that you're replacing, as well as your personal sweat sodium concentration. So the amount of electrolytes you're going to need would really vary dependent on the type of training that you're doing. So having them built into your gel actually limits the use of when you would be able to use these. That's one of the reasons that I think that Precision Fuel and Hydration have absolutely nailed their marketing, because some of the times you don't need sodium, in which case you can have the pure carb gel. Okay, I'm now flipping this over and reading the ingredients to you. So we've got water, maltodextrin, fructose. So they're actually the key ingredients that you use to make any gel. So the point of difference here is that they've got coconut water powder in there. Now that's going to give it a slight bit of a taste. So I'm excited to see if that coconut feel comes through. Plus, from a marketing perspective, adding coconut water in it, it makes it feel like, wow, that's going to be really hydrating. The coconut water powder in here isn't really going to help with hydration. What is going to help with hydration is having some water alongside. It's then got Himalayan salt to provide the amount of sodium, and that's quite fancy on the label. It makes it seem really clean and quite premium. But as explained earlier, I would personally prefer not to have my sodium in the gels. It's then got a preservative, which is potassium sorbate, and that's just going to mean they last a little bit longer. So all that's left to do now is taste it and give you my thoughts. I'm actually planning on taking these all out on a run and seeing how they go down while running. But I'm going to do the first one here as my little pre-fuel before I go out. So neutral flavour, how does it open? I've really made sure I've gone down on a diagonal there to get a nice wide base. I've absolutely squirted it everywhere, and I'm already, just from licking that, already getting the coconut taste. Okay, so as gels go, it's very wet, almost similar to the High Five Aqua Gels. It's that wet, really washes around your mouth. You don't get a massive hit of sweetness, but it does stay with you, and I think that's because it spreads so quickly around your mouth. I've had about half there. So the coconut taste does come through. It doesn't taste like if you were to buy one of those blue Vita Cocos. It's not that punchy, but it's very much a background of coconut. But I think almost the flavour that is trumping that is the salt. And to be honest, I quite like it because it's very sweet and you get that slight salt hit. It's just kind of like a salty sweet. I can imagine actually when you're dehydrated that would taste really good. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this actually. So as gels go, that has very much got the big thumbs up for me on flavour. What I'm nervous about is I found that quite salty in taste, and that was with 1/4 gram. Whereas this one has 4 times the amount of sodium. So I can imagine this one is going to be really quite salty, but we will find out on the run. Let's go. Okay, so just got back from my long run and I'm all showered up. It's time for the final verdict. So what did I make of these gels? I actually did look forward. So I ran with a variety of different brands in my running belt, and I did find that I was looking forward to tasting these ones. From a flavour profile, they are neutral, but they have that slight coconut hint. So it just kind of distracts from the plain sweet taste that you get in most unflavoured gels. The thing I was nervous about was the high salt content of the stronger one, and I thought that that would give quite a salty taste, but I didn't actually get that. That said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend the 1 gram of salt gel for most athletes. Now, unless you're going over 4 or 5 hours of exercise where your sweat rate might exceed 4 or 5 litres over the duration of your exercise, you probably don't need to have that much electrolytes. So if you're just a day-to-day runner or you're looking to fuel a marathon, for example, you're not going to need that much sodium. In which case, I would recommend their 0.25 or the 100 milligrams of sodium one. I would reserve the 1 gram ones for salty sweaters who are doing ultra endurance. So doing Ironman triathlons or 70.3s, for example. Remember, more sodium isn't better, because when you have too much sodium, you actually shift the fluid balance the wrong way, and it gives you the opposite effect of what you're looking for. So would I be buying more of these? in short, yes. So for race day, if I wasn't making my own in training, for race day when I want to have a few gels, I think I would be buying some of these, and I would go for the lower salt one, so then I can tailor my sodium intake through other fluids. So to sum things up, really do rate the flavour profile of this gel. I think the 1 gram is just far too much salt for most people. However, the lower sodium intake will be fine for most people. I hope you've enjoyed this gel review, and if you want to check out more of my gel reviews, click the link here. Remember, feel free to subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next video.